Captain Jack Miller stood at the viewport of the Coalition flagship, Resolute *, watching as another battle ended exactly like the hundreds before it. Neither side gained ground. Neither side truly lost. The war continued as it had for over 300 years. "Another draw," said Admiral Thorne, the blue-skinned alien commander who towered over Jack by at least 2 feet. "The Empire retreats to Sector 8. We hold position here." "As expected." Jack nodded but said nothing. As the only human officer on the bridge, he had learned when to keep his thoughts to himself. The other species in the Galactic Coalition had been fighting this war for generations. Many couldn't even remember how it started. "Something on your mind, Captain?" Admiral Thorne asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "With respect, sir, we just lost 23 ships and nearly 7,000 lives to gain nothing," Jack said. A low murmur spread across the bridge. The other officers, tall, logical Ardu, warrior-like Krell, and the insect-minded Vosh, all looked at Jack with what he had come to recognize as their versions of shock. Admiral Thorne's skin darkened slightly. "Those losses are within acceptable parameters, Captain. The Empire lost approximately the same. The balance maintains." "That's my point, sir," Jack continued, aware he was treading on dangerous ground. "We fight, we die. Nothing changes. For 300 years. This is the way of war," said Commander Drav, the chief Krell officer. "You humans have only been part of the Coalition for 15 years. You don't understand." Jack took a deep breath. Humans were still newcomers to galactic society. Earth had only developed faster than light travel 50 years ago, but maybe that was an advantage. "On Earth, we studied thousands of years of warfare," Jack said. "No conflict ever lasted this long without someone finding a way to end it." Admiral Thorne moved closer, looming over Jack. "And how would you end a war against an enemy that matches our every move?" "By not making the moves they expect," Jack replied simply. "We've fallen into patterns. We attack, they defend. They attack, we defend. Even our strategies have strategies. We're all so smart that we've outsmarted ourselves into a perfect loop." The bridge fell silent. Several officers exchanged glances. "An interesting observation," Admiral Thorne finally said, "but naive. This war is too complex for simple solutions. Your species thinks in too short a time frame." Jack wanted to argue but knew better. Instead, he nodded respectfully and returned to his station. The daily briefing continued. Reports of battles across 50 star systems, all ending the same way. Later, in the officers' mess hall, Jack sat alone with his meal until Lieutenant Rax, an Ardu officer, approached. "Your comments on the bridge were unusual," Rax said, sitting down. "But I have analyzed our battle records. There are patterns, as you suggested." Jack smiled slightly. "On Earth, we had a saying. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results." "A logical observation," Rax replied. "But the military high command believes our current strategy will eventually succeed, in perhaps another century or 2. Jack shook his head. "How many more lives is that worth?" "Trillions. And what if there's another way?" "The war machine is too big to change course now," said Commander Lori, a female Krell who had approached without Jack noticing. Her scaled skin reflected the light as she sat down. "Too many careers built on this conflict. Too many economies dependent on war production." Jack looked at both aliens, surprised by their candor. "So we just keep fighting forever?" Before either could answer, the ship's alarms blared. "All officers to battle stations," announced the computer. "Empire forces detected in Sector 5. The surprise attack." As they rushed from the mess hall, Jack couldn't help thinking, surprise attack in Sector 5. Right on schedule. The Resolute shuddered as it jumped to light speed, heading toward yet another battle that would change nothing. Little did Jack know that this particular battle would change everything. The battle in Sector 5 was going exactly as Jack had predicted. The Empire ships formed their usual defense pattern. The Coalition forces responded with their standard attack formation. Ships fired at each other from the same distances they always did. People died in the same ways they always had. Jack stood at his station on the bridge, watching the holographic battle display with growing frustration. "Admiral," Jack said, "their command ship has the same shield weakness we identified last month. If we concentrate fire..." A massive explosion rocked the Resolute Asterisk. Jack was thrown against his console as warning lights flashed across the bridge. Direct hit to the command deck. Someone shouted, "Admiral Thorne is down." Through the smoke and chaos, Jack saw Admiral Thorne lying motionless on the deck. Medical officers rushed to him, but Jack could tell from their movements that the Admiral was already dead. "Senior Officer Chain of Command is broken," announced the ship's computer. "Battle Group leadership defaults to Captain Jack Miller until higher command can be contacted." Jack froze. Every alien on the bridge stared at him. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was only in the command chain because of a recent temporary assignment. "Captain Miller," said Commander Laurie, the Krell warrior, "you have command." "Your orders." Jack looked at the battle display. The Empire forces were already shifting to take advantage of the confusion. They would expect the Coalition forces to fall back and regroup. The same response that had happened dozens of times before when a command ship was hit. "We're not retreating," Jack said firmly. "But standard procedure," began Lieutenant Rax, "has gotten us nowhere for 300 years, Jack finished. "New plan. Rax, tell the heavy cruisers to target these coordinates instead." He quickly marked several points on the display. "But those aren't their command ships," Rax said, confused. "Exactly. They're expecting us to go after command ships. We're going to hit their supply vessels instead." The bridge was silent. Then Laurie spoke up. "Supply vessels are not priority targets under Coalition battle doctrine." "Human battle doctrine disagrees," Jack said. "An army marches on its stomach, or whatever the Empire uses to eat. Without supplies, their battleships will have to retreat within hours." Rax looked doubtful. "This is highly irregular." "So is winning," Jack replied. "Make it happen." Reluctantly, the orders were transmitted. The Coalition ships shifted their attack pattern, confusing the Empire forces who had already begun their usual counter-moves. Within minutes, 3 Empire supply ships were crippled. Within an hour, the entire Empire fleet was in retreat, not the tactical withdrawal they usually performed, but a genuine, disorganized retreat. "They're running away," said Rax, sounding almost shocked. "All of them." The bridge crew stared at the display in disbelief. For many of them, this was the first time they had seen a clear victory in their entire careers. "Report from all ships," said Commander Laurie. "Coalition losses at 40% below average for an engagement of this size." Jack nodded. "Secure the system and begin recovery operations." As the bridge crew carried out his orders, Jack noticed them looking at him differently. The doubt was still there, but now mixed with something new, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of respect. Later, in Admiral Thorne's, now temporarily his, private office, Jack was reviewing the battle data when Laurie and Rax entered. "Coalition High Command has been informed of Admiral Thorne's death," Laurie said. "They are concerned about your unorthodox tactics." "You mean they're angry I didn't follow the rulebook," Jack said. "They have requested your presence at Central Command," Rax added, "to explain your decision-making process." Jack leaned back in his chair. "So I win the first decisive battle in decades, and my reward is to be questioned by command." "You disrupted 300 years of military doctrine," Laurie said. "Did you expect applause?" Jack smiled slightly. "Actually, I expected exactly this reaction. The question is, are you both here to escort me to my court-martial, or for something else?" Rax and Laurie exchanged glances. "We are here," Rax said carefully, to learn more about human battle tactics. Jack's smile widened. Then let's not waste time. We have a lot to discuss before I face command. The Coalition High Command chamber was massive, with curved walls that stretched up hundreds of feet. Jack stood in the center, feeling small as the 7 High Commanders looked down at him from their elevated seats. "Captain Miller," said High Commander Vex, his voice echoing. "You were given temporary command of Battle Group 7 due to Admiral Thorne's unfortunate death. Instead of following established battle protocols, you chose to implement human tactics." "I chose to win, sir," Jack replied simply. A murmur spread through the chamber. Behind Jack stood Rax and Lori, who had requested to accompany him as witnesses. "Your victory was unexpected," continued Vex, "but one success does not justify abandoning 3 centuries of carefully developed strategy." Jack took a deep breath. "With respect, High Commander, those 3 centuries of strategy have resulted in a perfect stalemate. No progress, just endless death." "You are not here to critique Coalition military doctrine," snapped another commander, a tall, thin alien with pale skin. "You are here to explain your actions." "My actions were based on Earth's military history," Jack said. "In our wars, when 2 sides reach a stalemate, victory often comes from changing the fundamental approach." He stepped forward and activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. "May I demonstrate?" After a reluctant nod from Vex, Jack displayed the battle recordings. "The Empire expects us to target their command ships. We always do. They expect us to retreat when our command is hit. We always do." Jack highlighted the Empire's formation. "But look here, their supply lines are always exposed because they know we never target them." The display showed Jack's attack on the supply ships and the resulting confusion in the Empire fleet. "This isn't just about one tactical victory," Jack continued. "It's about breaking predictable patterns. Both sides in this war have become so good at predicting each other that neither can win." "An interesting theory," said Vex coldly. "However, we cannot risk the safety of Coalition forces on human hunches." "Then give me one chance to prove it works," Jack said. "The Empire is planning to attack Nexus IV in 3 days. Everyone knows it. They always attack there at this time of year. And how would you respond differently?" asked a female commander who had been silent until now. "Let me show you," Jack said, pulling up a new simulation. For the next 20 minutes, he outlined a battle plan unlike anything the Coalition had tried before, combining deception, force concentration, and psychological warfare. When he finished, the chamber was silent. "These tactics," Vex finally said, "they come from Earth's history." "Yes," Jack replied. "From various Earth generals, Sun Tzu, Napoleon, Patton. Humans have fought thousands of wars. We've learned a few things." The commanders conferred quietly among themselves. "Very well, Captain Miller," Vex announced. "You will be given temporary command of the forces at Nexus IV. If your tactics succeed, we will consider implementing them more broadly. If they fail, you will be removed from command permanently." Jack nodded. "Thank you, sir." Later, as they left the chamber, Lori turned to Jack. "They're setting you up to fail. Nexus IV is a trap. The Empire always brings overwhelming force there." "I know," Jack said with a smile. "But that's exactly why it's the perfect place to change the game." "You planned this?" Rax asked, surprised. "Let's just say I understand politics as well as warfare," Jack replied. "High Command needs to save face. They can't admit I might be right. So they're giving me an impossible mission, expecting me to fail." "And when we succeed instead?" Lori asked. Jack's smile widened. "Then they'll have no choice but to listen. But first, we need to recruit more ships. The official battle group won't be enough." "More ships?" Rax looked confused. "High Command won't authorize additional forces." "Who said anything about asking permission?" Jack replied. "I need you to contact every ship commander who's tired of fighting the same battle over and over. Tell them it's time for something new. As they walked toward the hangar bay, Rax and Lori exchanged looks. Humans, Lori muttered. Either the most brilliant or the craziest species in the galaxy. Perhaps, Rax replied thoughtfully. Those two qualities are not so different. The battle for Nexus IV had been a complete success. Jack's unconventional tactics had confused the Empire forces so thoroughly that the Coalition had secured a victory with minimal losses. It was the second major win under his command, and word was spreading quickly throughout Coalition space. Now, 1 week later, Jack sat in a small, private room aboard the Resolute Asterisk, surrounded by data screens. Rax stood nearby, analyzing information as Jack requested. "Show me the weapons manufacturing reports for the last 50 years, Jack said. Rax pulled up the data. "What exactly are we looking for, Captain?" "Patterns," Jack replied, studying the scrolling numbers. "If this war has lasted 300 years without either side gaining advantage, someone must be benefiting from it." Lori entered the room, her scaled skin gleaming under the lights. "I have the reports you asked for. Troop deployment records going back 100 years. Jack nodded, then pointed to one of the screens. "There, look at these production numbers. The top 5 weapons manufacturers in Coalition space have grown by 800% since the war began." "That is to be expected in wartime," Rax said. "Yes, but look at who owns them." Jack pulled up another screen. "The same 5 families have controlled these companies for generations, and 3 of them have representatives on high command." Lori leaned forward. "That cannot be mere coincidence." "It gets worse," Jack continued. "These deployment records show that at least 20 times in the last century, Coalition forces were pulled back just when they had an advantage. Each time, the order came from someone connected to these same families." Rax's usually impassive face showed shock. "Are you suggesting High Command has been deliberately prolonging the war?" "Not all of them," Jack said, "but enough to ensure it never ends." He pulled up more data. "And I bet if we had access to Empire records, we'd find the same pattern there." The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. "But why?" Lori finally asked. "What purpose does endless war serve?" "Power, profit, control." Jack stood up and paced the room. "On Earth, we called it the military-industrial complex. War is good business for some people." Jack tapped another screen. "Look at these peace negotiation records. 17 formal peace talks in 300 years, all failing for seemingly minor reasons. Each time, key negotiators were suddenly replaced just before agreements could be signed." Rax studied the data carefully. "The statistical probability of this occurring naturally is virtually 0. "We need more proof," Lori said firmly. "If we accuse High Command without solid evidence, we'll be arrested for treason instantly." "Agreed," Jack said. "But first, we need to know how deep this goes. Has anyone noticed our investigation?" As if in answer, the ship's comm system beeped. "Captain Miller," came a voice. "You are ordered to return to Central Command immediately for reassignment." Jack looked at Rax and Lori. "That was fast. They're trying to separate us before we can gather more evidence." "What do we do?" Rax asked. Jack smiled. "We split up. Lori, you have contacts in the military chain of command. Find officers we can trust. Rax, dig deeper into these financial records. Follow the money trail." "And you?" Lori asked. "I'll go to Central Command as ordered. They'll be watching me closely, so I'll play along." Meanwhile, something interesting is happening across the battle lines. He pulled up intercepted Empire communications. "After our victories, several Empire commanders have broken formation in other sectors. They're fighting differently too. It's like they're following our example." "You think they're also questioning the endless war?" Rax asked. "I think some of them are," Jack replied. "And I think it terrifies the people profiting from all this." The room's lights suddenly flashed red. "Security alert," announced the ship's computer. Unauthorized personnel approaching officer quarters. They're not waiting for Central Command, Jack said quickly. They're coming for us now. He turned to his companions. Download everything we found and wipe these systems. We'll meet at the backup location we discussed. As they hurriedly gathered the evidence, Jack added quietly, the war might be endless, but the truth won't stay hidden forever. Jack's small ship dropped out of hyperspace in a remote section of space, far from both Coalition and Empire territory. The coordinates Rax had given him led to an abandoned mining station orbiting the dead moon. It had been 3 weeks since they'd escaped the Resolute Asterisk. 3 weeks of hiding, gathering evidence, and making new allies. Jack had barely escaped the security team sent to arrest him, taking a small shuttle and disappearing into the vast reaches of Coalition space. His comm unit blinked, showing an encrypted message. It was from Lori. Found 7 fleet commanders willing to listen. Sending them your way. Good news, but not enough. They needed more allies and stronger evidence before they could expose the truth. The docking bay of the mining station opened, allowing Jack's ship to enter. Inside, he found Rax waiting with several display screens already set up. Did anyone follow you? Rax asked immediately. No, but they're looking everywhere, Jack replied. High Command has labeled us traitors. There's a reward for our capture. Rax nodded. Expected. But Ida found something that makes it worthwhile. He activated the main screen. Financial records from both Coalition and Empire banking systems. Jack whistled. How did you get those? I have my methods, Rax said with the Ardu equivalent of a smile. The important thing is what they show. Look here. The screen displayed complex transaction records flowing between supposed enemy worlds. The same companies that profit from the war in Coalition space have secret partners in Empire territory, Rax explained. They share technology, resources, even weapons designs. The war is managed. Jack shook his head in disgust. Millions die every year while they get rich. Billions, Rax corrected. But there is more. I found communications suggesting that anyone who discovers this truth is eliminated. Admiral Thorne was investigating similar patterns before his death. His death wasn't random, Jack realized. They targeted him. Precisely. And now they will target us with even greater resources. As if on cue, the station's alarm system blared. Multiple ships approaching, said the automated system. Coalition military signatures detected. How did they find us? Jack moved quickly to the control panel. It does not matter, Rax said calmly. We have a contingency plan. We do. The docking bay opened again, and 3 more ships entered. Jack reached for his weapon, but Rax raised a hand to stop him. Allies, Rax explained as the ships landed. From the first ship emerged Lori, along with 2 Coalition officers Jack didn't recognize. From the second came 3 more Coalition commanders. But it was the third ship that shocked Jack. The hatch opened to reveal 2 Empire officers in their distinctive red uniforms. Jack tensed, but no one else seemed alarmed. Captain Miller, Lori said, meet Commander Dex and Lieutenant Murrah of the Empire 5th Fleet. Empire officers. Jack looked at Lori in disbelief. Here. Commander Dex stepped forward. He was tall and gray-skinned, with 4 arms, a typical Empire soldier. Captain Miller, your victories caught our attention. Some of us have also questioned why this war never ends. We've been communicating in secret, Lori explained. There are others like us in the Empire, officers who see the patterns, who know something is wrong. The same families that control your war industry control ours, Dex said. They keep us fighting while they profit. Jack looked around the room at the unlikely gathering. Coalition and Empire officers standing together without fighting. It was something that hadn't happened in 300 years. This changes everything, Jack said. With Empire officers confirming our findings, we have stronger evidence. But still not enough to stop the war, Rax cautioned. Those in power will simply eliminate us and continue. Then we need to do more than just expose them, Jack said, a plan forming in his mind. We need to break their control completely. How? Dex asked. Jack smiled. By doing what humans do best, improvising. And we'll start with something no one expects. Coalition and Empire forces fighting together instead of against each other. The station shook as Coalition warships entered the system. First, Jack said grimly, we need to survive the next few hours. 3 Coalition warships approaching, Rax announced, checking the station's sensors. Heavy cruiser class. They will be in firing range in 4 minutes. Jack looked at the gathered officers, Coalition and Empire together in one room. It was something he'd never thought possible. We can't outrun them, Jack said, and we can't outfight them. Then what do we do? Asked one of the Coalition commanders. Jack turned to Dex. Commander, your Empire ship, does it have active communication codes? Dex nodded. Yes, but... Perfect, Jack interrupted. Here's the plan. Your ship will transmit an emergency distress call claiming to be under attack by Coalition forces. Lori caught on immediately. Empire ships will respond. And when both Coalition and Empire ships arrive, Jack smiled. They will fight each other while we escape, Rax finished. No, Jack said firmly. They will see us, Coalition and Empire officers, working together. And they'll hear the truth. Commander Dex looked skeptical. You expect soldiers who have been enemies for centuries to suddenly listen to us? Not all of them, Jack admitted, but some will. The seeds of doubt are already growing. We just need to water them. With no better options, they quickly prepared. Dex sent the distress call while the others gathered their evidence. 20 minutes later, space around the station was filled with ships. 3 Coalition cruisers from one direction, 4 Empire battleships from another. All had weapons locked on each other, but none had fired yet. They were too confused by the strange signal coming from the station. Jack stood before a transmitter, broadcasting to all ships. Behind him stood the mixed group of Coalition and Empire officers. This is Captain Jack Miller of the Coalition, he began. And yes, I am standing with Empire officers. Before you open fire, ask yourselves, why has this war lasted 300 years without either side winning? He transmitted the financial records Rax had gathered. These documents prove that powerful families on both sides have been profiting from this war. They share technology, resources, and information to keep the fighting balanced, to ensure it never ends. Lori stepped forward. I am Commander Lori of the Coalition 7th Fleet. I have verified these records myself. We have been used as pawns in a game that benefits only the wealthy and powerful. Dex joined them. I am Commander Dex of the Empire 5th Fleet. The same families control our military production. They have grown rich while our people die in a war designed never to end. On the screens monitoring the ships outside, Jack could see they weren't firing. They were listening. You don't have to believe us, Jack continued. Check these records yourselves. Ask why peace talks always fail at the last minute. Ask why we fight the same battles over and over with the same results. He took a deep breath. For 300 years, they've kept us fighting. But today, we make a different choice. Today, we stop being enemies. The response was immediate. Some ships, both Coalition and Empire, turned their weapons on the station. Others positioned themselves to protect it. It's working, Rax said quietly. They're choosing sides. What followed was chaos. Some captains demanded they surrender as traitors. Others asked for more information. A few simply watched, uncertain. This is just the beginning, Jack told his allies as they monitored the growing division among the ships. The word will spread. More will question. The cycle is breaking. An Empire officer, one who had arrived with the battle group, opened a direct channel to the station. I've reviewed your evidence, she said. My crew has questions, many questions. A Coalition captain followed with a similar message. Jack looked at the others with hope in his eyes. It's happening. Slowly, but it's happening. "What now?" Lori asked. "Now," Jack replied, "we take this message to every corner of both territories. The truth may not set us free immediately, but it's a start." As if to emphasize his point, more ships began arriving. Drawn by the unusual standoff, the movement that would end 300 years of war had begun. 3 months had passed since the standoff at the mining station. What began as a small group of questioning officers had grown into a movement that spread across both Coalition and Empire space. Jack stood on the observation deck of the massive neutral space station where the peace conference was taking place. Below him, representatives from both sides sat together at a large round table, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "They're actually talking," Lori said as she joined him at the window. "Not fighting. Talking. Some are still fighting," Jack reminded her. "The families and corporations that profited from the war won't give up easily. But they're losing," Rax said, approaching from behind. "Every day, more ships refuse to fight. More planets demand peace." Jack nodded. The path hadn't been easy. There had been attempts to silence them. Assassination attempts. Fake news calling them traitors. Even false flag attacks trying to reignite hatred between the two sides. But the truth had spread too far to be stopped. "Captain Miller," called a voice. Jack turned to see Commander Dex approaching with another Empire officer. "The Council is ready for your address." Jack took a deep breath. "I still don't understand why they want me to speak. This peace is because of all of us." "Because you were the first," Dex said simply. "The human who questioned what no one else would question. Your species has an interesting quality," the other Empire officer added. "You refuse to accept things as they are just because that's how they've always been." Jack smiled slightly. "We call it stubbornness." "We call it hope," Lori said. The main chamber of the station was filled with hundreds of representatives from both Coalition and Empire worlds. As Jack walked to the speaking platform, he saw faces from dozens of species, many who had been bitter enemies just months before. He also saw anger on some faces. Not everyone wanted peace. The rich and powerful who had controlled the war still had influence. "We gather today," Jack began, "not as Coalition or Empire, but as people who share one galaxy. For 300 years, we fought a war that was designed never to end. A war that made the few wealthy while the many suffered." He paused, looking across the gathered faces. "I am not here to place blame. I am here to ask a simple question. What could we accomplish together that we could never achieve apart?" Murmurs spread through the crowd. Already, scientists from both sides have begun sharing knowledge. Medical breakthroughs that were kept secret are now being used to save lives across all worlds. Resources once used for weapons are being redirected to solve common problems. Jack pointed to a large view screen showing a planet being rebuilt after centuries of fighting. "This is just the beginning. We have 300 years of war to undo. We will face resistance. There will be those who try to divide us again because peace threatens their power." His voice grew stronger. "But now we know the truth, and we have something stronger than their wealth or influence. We have a vision of a future without endless war." As Jack continued speaking, he noticed something remarkable happening in the chamber. Representatives who had been seated apart began to mix, to talk with those they once considered enemies. "The peace process won't be perfect," Jack concluded. "There will be setbacks and challenges, but for the first time in 300 years, we're moving forward instead of in circles." The applause started slowly, then grew until it filled the massive chamber. Later, as the formal signing of the peace accords began, Jack stood with Rax, Lori, and Dex. "Did you ever imagine this when you first questioned Admiral Thorne?" Lori asked. Jack shook his head. "Honestly, I was just tired of fighting the same battle over and over." "Humans," Dex said with the Empire equivalent of a smile. "You see a problem, and you must fix it, even if it's been there for centuries." "Especially if it's been there for centuries," Jack corrected. As they watched the signing ceremony, Rax turned to Jack. There's a saying spreading among my people now. If you want to win a battle, hire a Krell. If you want to end a war, find a human. Jack laughed. I can live with that. The endless war had finally ended because a human took charge.